We'll go back to that share screen. Okay, you should see GYA2 there now on the top right. That's your code. Is that screen back up for you now? Okay, now I got to give Ken control here for a little bit, which is scary to give Ken control of anything. But all right, Ken, you should have it.
Hey, thank you. Hey, we're gonna move into the Keychain Leadership Commitment. This one is really close to my heart. I guess over the years I've watched so many programs come and go, and heard so many excuses by why Seventh-day Adventist churches can't grow, or what we need. And you know, I guess I find, especially here these last few years, that young people, young adults, even middle-aged people don't leave our churches mad. They're not hostile, but they just aren't interested. It doesn't appeal to them. They haven't found community or fellowship in their churches. And obviously it's just not Adventism. We're finding across all denominations that's happening. The greatest group of people growing, according to Barna research, is a group called the Nuns. And it's not N-U-N-S, it's N-O-N-E-S. They don't claim any affiliation. They're just not interested. We've watched it with our own kids and our own family. Moved to a large metropolitan area, and we thought for sure they would be able to find a congregation and a church to attend and worship. And they haven't been greeted. They didn't have a program for kids other than maybe a children's story. They didn't find fellowship. And I'm thinking, oh, please, Jesus, help there be a place where they can find it and belong. And over the years we've watched, well, let's plan bigger events, and that'll make our church grow. Let's build a better facility. Our church is old. We don't have a fellowship room or a central room where people can come. Let's relocate. Let's move our church to a growing area. Let's hire a cool youth pastor or a young adult, or get our senior pastor some skinny jeans so he can be relevant and relate. Let's get a hot praise band. Let's bring in some super music and really wow them. Let's raise more money so we can have more funds to do with it. Let's stream our service on the internet. If we're going to be relevant.
That's happening. COVID made that happen.
Exactly. Well, hey, you know what? We just need a new pastor. Have you heard that in your territory? Yeah, well, our church will grow if we had a new pastor. Well, we just need to plan more programs that involve our church here, and probably we would grow if we could just get rid of some of these old members that we have hanging around. Bad reasons, and they don't work, and they're excuses. The one great commitment that I just really warms my heart is that we can make a difference. Okay, churches that grow young can be addressed in any order. Okay, these commitments. There's not, that wheel is cyclical. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you can start anywhere. They're not progressive. They don't precede one another. One is not more important than another. That's the beauty of this program. You might recognize some of the 6 core commitments because your church is already doing them. And I say celebrate that. As you work with the churches in your territory, obviously you don't just come in and begin to spank them. And I wouldn't assume that any of you are doing that anyway, but you encourage them where they are growing and where they are having success. Listen to each of those and think of examples in their church where positive things are happening, okay? Apart from a Jesus-centered community, we're going to grow old. If we continue to grow old, we're going to die. And we don't want our churches to die. Keychain leadership. Going to show you just a little bit of a video that helps explain this a little bit. Richard, specifically, Keychain leadership opens the door and provides the key to someone younger to open a door in order to join them in leading and taking leadership themselves, okay? So you might call it mentorship in today's world, but it enables a spirit and a commitment that's demonstrated by not only pastoral leadership, but congregational leaders. And it permeates young adults and kids and older people to use their gifts in leadership positions, okay? That makes sense? Richard, does that clarify what Keychain Leadership is about?
Yes.
Okay. And Fuller assumes that everybody has keys. Okay, some keys to the church and church leadership and positions. And it really decentralizes an authoritarian type of leadership. Boy, some of my early pastoral training, and I know I'm so glad we have changed and growth, but I can remember sitting at the feet of some instructors who said, pastors, don't get close to the people in your congregation. Don't have close friends, don't share, and don't. Well, that's not the message of today. The message of today is that congregations, and especially younger generations, want authenticity. Okay, they're not interested in top-down leadership. They want authenticity. They want reality. For the pastor to say, I have had a tough week, resonates better than saying I'm perfect and everything is going well and working for me. So Keychain Leadership develops some of these principles, and it opens the opportunity for other people to lead and to step out. Watch this little video clip from a church in Homosassa, Florida, and I think you'll be impressed with their story. Here we go.
We have an older membership. I think it probably 75 years would be an average. And for a period of 6 or 8 years, we prayed for more young people, more children, more youth. And we would have some come for a little while and then leave. And the last 3 years, we've been truly blessed, in part by Diane Fisher.
I found this church through the food pantry. We were in need, and I came to this food pantry, and then I decided, well, I'm going to give this church a try, and I did. And they're just welcomed me with open arms, and then I started bringing my grandkids here.
It is a very welcoming environment. Everybody on Sabbath will come and greet you, and just very warm.
And whenever you walk in a church, like if you smile at something, they're going to smile back at you. Like no one is like distant. We're all just get along.
On like during the week, they'll call you, and like people at the church will just call you and ask you if you're doing okay and all that.
What we've found is children beget children. If you have some and they sell your church, then others come.
How I started to go to the church was my sister Alexis. She asked me, hey, do you want to come to church one day? And I was like, okay, I'll see what it's like. And at first I was really nervous, and then I met Sue and Bob, and I was like, whoa, I love this. And all the people were sweet and kind, and I learned a lot, and it made me feel more connected. We've been bringing friends and siblings and cousins and stuff like that. What I usually tell them to get them motivated to come to church is, well, there's some really nice people here, and God is a big part of your life. He loves you, He sees you every day, He makes sure you're okay, and if you come to church, you can be so much more connected with God than you already are.
And I think one of the things we learned from the other youth that we had here, that we never, I like to say, gave them the keys to the church. We welcomed them, we let them do it. We never gave them something to do. And so this time we've given them something to do, and we let them tell us what they wanted to do. We have a schedule of activities, they prepare it. They got to be part of the church. If they're going to stay here, they've got to be part of the church family. So not short, but a simple answer is give them the keys to the church.
How I've become a owner of the church. I feel like once I got baptized, I felt so connected with everybody, even more than I already felt, and I felt like maybe if I get a job I'd be 10 times more connected, and I can make everybody see that I love you guys. You know, I want to be here, I want to spend time with you, I want to learn about God with you, and I think I've definitely brought that out on everyone.
I've learned like a sense of like responsibility. Like I feel responsible, and I feel like I can pretty much do anything with the church because I know they have my back.
I learned to be very kind and caring and also responsible and to take care of this church.
They've come a long way, because I never thought I would have seen my grandkids studying openly the Bible in, you know, a fast food restaurant. But we go and we do it, and they have no problem with it. So that's awesome.
And they're the future of this church. The people like myself and other members, and if this church is going to survive, then these young people are going to be the ones that lead it into the future. Don't stand back and say, we used to do it this way, so you've got to do it this way. That's not going to win any souls. That's not going to win any souls. I don't care how old you are, and I keep harping on this, the leaders and the older people that are sitting back fussing about things, they can take a leadership role. You know, mentor a young person. It's kind of a two-way street. You want them to be part of the church family. Okay, bring them into your heart. Bring them into your heart. If anybody tells me they're too old to work with young people, come see me, okay? I'd be more than happy to tell them out. So. We have an older membership. I think it.
Sorry, my bad. Oops, let's go back one. There you go. What I like about that video, did you hear what their average age of that church was? 75. And yet, when you look at the pictures in there, there's a whole lot of intergenerational stuff going on, because these guys decided they needed to grow young, and they unlocked the keys. Basically, they hand the keys to kids saying, here you go, be part of us. I think it's a great video, which I'll send you a link for that if you want that later on. I don't know, I think it's too large to put into the chat window.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken, go ahead.
No, that's great. Any other reactions? What jumped out at you about that testimony?
I see the embodiment of some of the keychain leadership that we're referring to.
Yeah.
Mature, real, warm, know what matters to people. I mean, entrust and empower others, and take the long view. I mean, the gentleman himself, you can tell right off the bat, he embodies that. Each one of the characteristics of the keychain leadership. And it took me back to, it's like you say, this isn't new. It took me back to those who took me under their wing, to the first church I joined. I remember, and it resonates, it does. And what comes to mind is, where did we lose it? You know, where did we lose it? And I think if we can identify that in each church, you pick up from there. Just some of the notes that I put down here. Really powerful stuff.
Good.
Enjoy the video.
Good, good. Any other thoughts?
I thought one of the things that I liked about what he said was, you know, he's saying that there's other people that come to them, and he's saying, why don't you take a different role? One of the things when I was doing church coaching, son, that helped the older people was for me to say, your role now changes. It doesn't mean you lose your job, because they're afraid of losing out on their purpose. So you have to change the role. So now instead of being an elder, you're a mentoring elder. Instead of being a deacon, you're a mentoring deacon. You're teaching them how to do this thing. And so you shift roles for the older people and help them understand that their role is to train and unlock the keys and hand the keys of the church to the next generation. If they understand they're not losing their own purpose, they're a lot more likely to go ahead and give keys to the younger generation. If they feel like they will have no more purpose at the church, then they're going to hold on to control.
We're finding out that most people in leadership positions in our churches don't fear change as much as they fear loss. A loss of responsibility, a loss of control, a loss of power, a loss of status. They can handle change better, but it's that loss element. And so finding ways to bridge and ease the loss makes Keychain leadership come alive a little bit. I'm going to share just a couple quick stories in a second about my journey, which is and it's not about me today, but those impact that it had on my early life. Fuller says that they've identified 4 types of leadership in churches. The first group is keyless leaders. Keyless leaders. These are people that are ready to lead, but they have never been given the opportunity to do so. And maybe you can think of people as you come across and as you travel and visit these churches, you say, man, that person has the potential or this or that, but they've never been given the opportunity. And sometimes those people, I do understand, take a back seat. They sit and they don't come forward, but they're ready to do something and maybe just don't have been given a key. So they're keyless leaders. The second group is key hoarding leaders. Key hoarding leaders. These are people in church leadership that have earned these keys. They give people status and power. And I've been an elder in this church for
40 years.
40 years. In other words, I've earned this. I'll keep it. I'm going to do it. And when I die, then somebody will get the key to that position. I remember, I think Justin Yang in the Atlanta Korean Church faced some of that with his Korean leadership when he first went in. Average age was 75, 78 of his elders board. Great people, great leaders. They had served that church well, supported that church financially, but they were dying. And some of them actually were ready to give the keys over before they died. And so Justin had to find ways to help bridge that and have it happen. But those are key hoarding leaders. The third group, Fuller says, are key loaning leaders. Key loaning leaders. They let you touch the keys. They might even let you borrow the key. But you better give it right back because they know right where you are and they want that key and they're going to give it back. I think of the high school janitor who has the big ring of keys on his keychain, and that chain comes out about 8 feet and he'll hand it in. And if you ask for a key to a certain door in that school, he'll go with you, he'll follow you, he'll even let you touch the key, but the key is still attached to that chain. Okay, and he's watching all the time. Those are key loaning leaders. They'll loan it to you, but boy, they're going to pull it right back. And you've probably met people, and even in some of your church experiences, had people that were key loaning leaders. The key chain leader are confident, empowering, they equip others, and they facilitate others by giving away, offering up the key so that people can unlock and do ministry in the church. We became Seventh-day Adventist Christians when I was just a young boy through evangelistic meetings. Someone literally knocked on our door in Aberdeen, Washington, a city that has a rainforest and a rain festival that starts January 1 and ends December 31. I mean, it just rains all the time. It's a city known as the home of Kurt Cobain, the grunge rocker. This lady knocked on our door. I opened the door and she walked straight in, white hair, sat on our couch and invited my mother and my sister and I to evangelistic meetings. We went to the Adventist church that was just down about 2 blocks from our house. We knew the church was there. We didn't know anything about it. Well, we were introduced to Jesus Christ at those meetings, and we became Seventh-day Adventist Christians. Right after that, we moved to the city of Tacoma, Washington, and we attended a fairly large church, Tacoma Central Church. I went to the junior Sabbath school, and I can't tell you the names of my junior Sabbath school leaders, but they got me involved. I was helping with some music, read an occasional story, be involved in the social activities. And as my relationship grew in junior Sabbath school, they gave me more responsibility. And make a long story short, after about 2 years, I was given a physical key, the actual key to that church that opened up the junior room and the supply closet and the electronic devices, and I could actually get in a side door of that large church at the age of 12. Now, I don't know if it required a church board action. I don't know if they had to get approval from the pastoral staff or the city commission, but somebody understood Keychain leadership. And I would come early on Sabbath morning, sometimes ride my bicycle to church to unlock the junior Sabbath school room and get that room set up for our Sabbath school program. My responsibilities with that key gave me ownership, gave me at the age of 12, 13, a small sense of power. And it unlocked in me leadership potential. So much so that when all my friends and classmates graduated from junior Sabbath school and went to early teen, which was now the cool Sabbath school, I stayed in juniors and kept my key and mentored the new group of junior kids coming through in Sabbath school. Now, not a great big deal. Not going to be written up in any history books, but for my spiritual development and growth, I attribute the hand of God being on those junior leaders that entrusted me with the authority and the physical key to that Sabbath school room and church. I didn't go to any early teen Sabbath schools. I went from junior to academy. But I found a place to belong. And I believe that in a small way, or maybe even a large way, it contributed to my call to ministry for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the kingdom of God. Unlocking that Keychain leadership. Somebody back then, 40 years ago, understood that concept. As I shared this story a couple months ago with a group of about 100 people in a room, at the end of the presentation, a lady rushed up. She says, "Pastor Ken, I got to tell you this story. I got to tell you." So I said, "Well, share with me." She said, 2 weeks ago at our church board meeting at a church within the Southern Union Territory, she said, we had an 1.5 hour long discussion. And I said, "About what?" She said, "Well, we have a young man in our church who is interested in electronics." And she says, "He's been working at the sound control board," she said, "for almost a year now." And she says, "He does an incredible job. Our microphones are set up. There's no squawking. There's no squeaking. It's live. He has it tuned. Everybody can hear. Things are in place." And she says, he's just about 15 years old and he's doing an incredible job. But here it comes. Every Sabbath morning, he has to wait for a deacon to come and unlock the sound control board. And she says, sometimes he waits 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes when he could be all set up and then he has to rush. And she says he gets frustrated. And he said he asked the pastor if he could have a key to the sound control board. And she said it went to church board committee. And she said we talked for an hour and a half on whether or not we could give the 15-year-old just a key to unlock the sound control board. And I said, and how does the story end? And she shook her head. She says, I am sorry to tell you, she said, we could not vote to approve to give this kid the key to the sound control board. Now, I don't know some of the dynamics surrounding that. I don't know the discussion. I wasn't there. But it sure seems, Victor, like a lost opportunity to empower and unlock keychain leadership in a young man whose skills we desperately need in the church to give good sound projection for everything that happens up front. I think they missed an opportunity. And again, I'm not judging, but it seems like they missed an opportunity to unlock keychain leadership for this young man. Oh, the potential that he might have. And maybe his story would end up like some of ours and some like Richard shared, of being empowered to do, to give service to his church and his community that way. Those are my stories. What keys?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, if you go to your phones now, your second device, you should have a series of questions. There's an active poll. Just take a few minutes and see if you can answer those questions. It should have flipped on. Your screen will have changed, or should have. And you should be able to see those, and then we'll walk through what you have to say.
Okay, can we use our recent pastoral experience for this? I suspect not our positions right now. Okay, all right.
That'd be fine. Use any experience you got, okay?
So this needs to be not just a church within our region. This is from our perspective.
However, if you want to do it from a church within your region, that's fine. If you want to do it from your own pastoral experience, that's fine. Okay, so can you see the, you can see the screen still? Let's look at this. What keys do you have right now? Every church has many keys. I have ears to listen, ability to motivate, empower, support, leadership within a group of pastoral leaders, previous pastoral experience, congregation and district, coordinate evangelism, outreach, church growth programs, chair executive board, keys to provide financial support, the actual church keys, physical church keys, yeah. What keys have you shared with young people? Usually it happens to the coaching and mentoring of young pastors, audio visual, booth responsibilities, youth directorship on church board, elder position, platform and leadership skills development, empower younger people to develop the program. And then Ken simply said yes. I don't know if that was Ken or not. Okay. Who else holds keys at your church? Senior pastors who are involved in the mentoring process, first elders and all church board leaders, administrators, 5 people. And in some churches, that's very true. 5 people have the key and that nobody else gets them. I preached up at one of our churches in Rick's territory, And it was during the camp meeting time a couple of years ago, the Northern camp meeting that you do up there. And the pastor was gone, and so was the soundboard guy. And nobody had a key to the soundboard. And I had all kind of multimedia stuff to do with them, and they couldn't get in there to turn on the projector. Everything was under one lock and key. And finally, I started thinking like a sound guy and said, I wouldn't want to carry this key home. Where would I hide it? So while they were out trying to call somebody to get a key, I was looking around the soundboard, found the key, unlocked it, opened the thing up, and had it all fired up. And they came back in and said, we can't find, you got it. Yeah, I got it. So we're good to go. But literally, it's about control, and control keeps people from moving on. Let's go to the next one. What will it take for them to share their keys with young people? Folk need to understand the vision, and I think they may better understand. Okay? Encouraging the senior pastors to allow the younger ones to take on more responsible roles. And by the way, I've had some senior pastors very willing to share those, but the church board wasn't. And they fought the senior pastor on it. Trust in the importance of empowering others. And that's, I like our conference thing, growth through shared leadership, but we don't often do that. We say it a lot. We don't often share the leadership. Collaboration and communication. Just ask. In Hispanic churches, sharing a physical key is not a problem. Yeah, you want a key? Here you go. But we go beyond physical keys to actually empowering roles. And I know that Hispanic churches do that fairly well as well, because Betsa, my secretary, from the time she was a teenager, was doing communications, was doing youth, was doing Pathfinders, was doing, when she joined my team, I had to actually tell her, Betsa, you're going to need to choose something to let go of, because you can't do this job and all of that stuff you're doing as well, and then have, get married and have a baby and keep it all going. And finally, she came back and said, okay, I gave up this. So you're going to say something, Miguel.
Yes. I have Hispanic churches that have a realtor lock in front of the church. So when you want to go to the church, you just call somebody and give you the code to have a physical key, enter and put the key back. So you feel free to whatever you're going to do at church, going in your time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
There are other Hispanic churches I work with as well that wouldn't give a key to anybody.
Yeah.
Because it's for some people, and it's just, I think, crosses cultures. For some people, having that actual key in their control means they hold the power.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a way that we actually put our kids off. All right.
Donnie, I was in a church where maybe one of the most powerful positions was the locksmith. After every nominating committee year, he changed the locks across the board on the church, and that was his control.
So everybody used to have a key to the church. No longer it works.
Yep. Wow.
That's expensive too. Unless he was just doing it gratis.
It was ministry.
Yeah, got it.
I think, and I don't know how it all works, but when I thought about unlocking some of the keychain leadership, I think when pastoral search committees happen, do we have who's making up those search committees? Is it established leaders? Are we incorporating younger generations? Is there a youth under the age of 16 that might have something that could contribute to that philosophy? And then I thought about, and I'll go way out on a limb here a little bit, but what about our church boards? If a church board made a commitment that every church board member would mentor one younger person under the age of 35, and that person sat with them at every board meeting, and for that first year, the church board member would not cast his vote or her vote without conferring with the young person next to them for that year. So they're in conference going back and forth, and then the committee member can vote, but not until there's been collaboration and communication back and forth. And then in the second year, the mentee gets to make the vote, but not on their own, but only in conference with the older church member who's been in the establishment. What kind of things, I know that's kind of wild and out there, but those are the kind of things that kind of unlock and get us off the traditional way that we've always done things, and opens up Keychain leadership potential. Can I still be an Adventist?
Well, barely, but we might have to rebaptize you again.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm working with a church right now, and they've been going through the Growing Young, and actually they're in search of a pastor. And at the initial meeting with their board, I said, since you're wanting to grow young, might I recommend that we include a couple of young people on this search committee? There was silence. And so really, I was kind of calling their bluff, and so far, it's not panned out that there are any younger people. They're saying the right things, but they're not necessarily moving into action on that. Which we'll see how it goes.
Baby steps, keep going. That's the right direction.
And as we'll see in the next section, part of it, of actually moving that direction, comes when you begin to empathize with young people. So we're going to take a break now, about 10 minutes. I'm going to pause the recording. We'll come back in about 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, get some water. So let me just share the screen, get your Slido ready to go, because we're going to be moving into that again. All right. We figured you were out running around the lake because you left the canoe there, Rick. Yeah. Oh, he was on a snack break too. Thought you might be running around the lake because you left the canoe. So, all right. So, one of the things that we have a problem with when we talk about empathizing with young people, today's young people, is that we don't understand them. It's like they're almost speaking a different language. Victor, you might have noticed this with your kids. They're saying words that come out of their mouth, and you think you know the meaning of them, but you're way off, because when you use those words, they meant something totally different. So I want to see how up to date you guys are with the 2020 teen slang. Okay, so if you go to Slido, let me go over here. How many of these terms do you know the 2020 meaning of? So go through there and just, if they're multiple choice, take a little bit and choose the ones you think. Some of them you can choose more than one, but what do they mean? What do you think they mean? We're going to talk about those. As soon as you make your guesses, hit send. I chose words that I hear commonly among ACF students. And I didn't know what they meant, and I had to go figure it out. Okay, we got 2, 3,
I just guess
or,
it because I don't know the majority of it.
well, I think that's what most everybody's doing, Miguel. They're just guessing.
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as we get the last one going there, hit send. Then we'll roll.
Hey, Don, if I get all these right, can I wear skinny jeans?
Yeah, but I don't want Victor has asked me a while ago where my skinny jeans were. I said, don't even visualize that. The last time I had skinny jeans was when I was 11. I might have been a little older, but anyway. Okay, here we go. Let's roll on with this. How many of these terms do you know the meaning of? What is the common use of the word? Now, I've highlighted the correct answer in green. Overly dramatic. You're being so extra right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she celebrated her birthday for an entire month. She is so extra. Some of you said more than one girl, boyfriend, having surplus. Nobody said overweight or super cool. Okay, cool. Let's go on. What does snatched mean? It means two things. One means it's emphasizing an insult. Then I said, by the way, everything you said and stand for is wrong, and I can't even believe people as ignorant as you exist. And the other person says, oops, snatched. It also means very fashionable. You'll hear them say, that outfit is so snatched. You look so good, you know, kind of thing. Now, some of you guys went with the old school meaning stolen. That's what I would say snatched meant. But most of you got emphasizing an insult. Look at you guys go. Man, you're up on it. Okay. What is fit to Gen Z? Very physically attractive, toned and healthy, out of one's league, well-coordinated apparel is actually short for outfit. Now, if you're in Great Britain, it means you're attractive. But in the US, that word means you've got a well-coordinated outfit. She had a fire fit at the party. And if you guess what fire was, you'll know what that meant. Their fit was bold. That's another way to say it. Okay? What does it mean to cap? To write your social media post or text in all caps, that would be you adults. I knew I'd suck you in on that one. To explode in anger, it's actually to lie about something. Now, you'll hear them say caps or no caps. They'll be saying, dude, you throw caps all the time. You can't even trust what you're saying. What you said is the biggest cap I've heard in a minute. You know, I'm telling you, this is exactly the way it is, no caps. In other words, that's the truth. All you do is cap. There's nothing real about you, okay? Now, the 90s version of that was to shoot someone in the head. I'm going to bust a cap in your head. Okay, but that's no longer it. Now it's to lie. All right? That's fire. Means cool and amazing, trendy, hot. I agree with that. It means all of them. You just got to figure out. And it all depends upon the context of it. So that's fire. All right? To flex means to knowingly flaunt or show off. Most of you guys got that. Not to back down in an argument, wear stuff to show off one's physique. That's the 90s version there. To call attention to something. So if you use it as a verb, you're flexing. You're going to flex, you know. If you're using it as a noun, you're taking an object that you're flexing. So that's to call attention to something. Like big flex. I just got a job promotion last night. So why do we go through all this? Why do we talk about it? Well, because it's like we're in two different worlds speaking two different languages. And the same thing happens in the church. we think we're saying one thing, they're hearing something totally different. We think that we are communicating clearly, and they're saying, what in the world are you talking about? And unless we actually take the time to empathize, to listen, to figure out where they're going with things, where they're at with things, we risk misunderstanding and misreading, and actually we can cause more harm than we do good. So let's look at the core commitment here. Empathize with today's young people. So what do you mean by empathy? Thank you for asking. When we talk about empathy, we mean feeling with young people as defined by Stanford University's design school. Empathizing is the work you do to understand people. It is your effort to understand the way they do things and why, their physical and emotional needs, how they think about the world, and what is meaningful to them. Now, if you're looking at that definition, how well would you say our churches are empathizing with young people? Okay, Richard's got me the thumbs down.
The church usually thinks that that they need to adapt. End of story. They need to adapt to us. It's not that we need to try to empathize. No, they just need to get with it.
Well, and the interesting thing is, we've done the adapting in all of our mission work everywhere else except with our kids. If we go to Africa, if we go to Asia, if we go to anywhere around the world, we go to Mission Institute, we learn about the culture, and then we enter into it with culture appropriate things to help win those people, right? What happens with the teen culture is we just expect them to get in line because they're our own. But it's actually, if you look at it as a different country, we have to understand the way they do things and why, their physical and emotional needs, how they think about the world, what's meaningful to them. And kids live in a world within a world. And you'll find that you can walk into a room full of kids, and any of you guys with kids know this happens, and they'll suddenly go quiet because they've been operating on their level down here, and suddenly you come in and they're like, oh, yeah, So what happens is, for us to really empathize with kids, we've got to begin understanding the way they do things, why, their physical, emotional needs, how they think about those things. And here's an interesting finding by Fuller. They said, we couldn't help but notice that young people who are surrounded by empathetic adults often become more empathetic themselves. I thought that was fascinating. And they cited 2 or 3 stories of kids who experienced empathy and were able later on to demonstrate that same empathy to someone else. And so it's important that we learn to be empathetic towards teens or young adults. 3 questions that they're asking. If we're going to empathize with today's young people, we have to explore these questions. They're often what keep teenagers and emerging adults awake at night. Here's the questions. Who am I? Where do I fit? What difference do I make? Now, when you look at that, the first is about identity. Who am I? How do I know who I am? How do I explore that? The second is about belonging. Where do I fit? What's my place in this thing? One of the key concepts we're working on with ACF right now is having our chapters become places where people can belong even before they believe. So that we're helping our leaders understand the concept that everybody needs to belong somewhere. And when people come to universities, they're lost in a huge crowd. And one of the best things you can do is provide a place for them to belong even before they believe. And that helps them answer that question, where do I fit? The third is about what's that?
That's a little bit of a departure from our typical, even evangelistic approach. You can belong after you believe, rather than finding a place of fellowship and acceptance before you totally buy the package.
Yes, yes, exactly. The third is about purpose. What difference do I make? Now, let me say this. I think that these are the questions of every generation. At every stage of the game, we have these same three questions. You know, we ask these questions all the time, and as we shift to a new, maybe a new phase of ministry, a new different thing, we saying, okay, who am I? Where do I fit? And what's my purpose? What difference do I make? And as we shift, but the young people, you know, experience these questions very acutely. There was a young man who walked into his youth pastor's office. His name was Steve. And he said, have you seen this? And he held up a Life magazine. And it had pictures of the poor, impoverished kids in Africa and you know, dying there. And he said, yeah, Steve, I've seen that. And what are we going to do about it? Well, you know, Steve, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. That young man at that point decided to walk out of the church because he didn't feel like that youth pastor empathized with him. He thought, well, if they're not going to be empathetic with these people over here, because there was no further dialogue, nothing like, well, what would you suggest maybe we do? What are some ideas you might have that we could do something about this? That young man walked out of the church and never went back. In fact, he spent his entire life making a difference, but not for the church. You might know his last name too, is Jobs. Steve Jobs had that interaction with his youth pastor. He left the church, never went back, but he spent a lifetime after he made millions trying to make a difference for those people. What would have happened if there'd have been more dialogue? Rather than, well, I know you don't understand, but you know, yeah, this stuff happens and we can't do a whole lot about it. So the idea is they experience it very acutely, and for us to listen, to pay attention, to give them an ear, helps them realize, hey, there are people that care. There are people that I can go to for answers. And the more we do that, the more they're willing to actually listen to what we have to say. Consider this. Puberty now starts earlier. It's around 11. And psychologists, sociologists have said it starts around the onset now of the girl's first menstrual cycle, which is now around 11, some even 10, but the average is 11. And it goes later. They now have late adolescence going to nearly 25. And today's young people have access to more knowledge of the world via the mobile devices in their pockets than their parents ever had. And yet at 25, many still rely on those same parents to fund their mobile plan that gives them access to the world.
Well,
so here's what you got. Earlier start, later finish equals a longer race for puberty. It's a very tumultuous time. A longer race plus increased stress, which our kids are under immense stress now, equals a more likelihood to get waylaid and make major mistakes. So how does the church react when those kids make major mistakes? If you're going to empathize with kids, you can't continue to go back to judgment. So one illustration, what would that look like? Well, as I was a youth pastor, it was no surprise oftentimes when a girl suddenly dropped out of my youth group because she was pregnant. And I remember coming to Sabbath school one time at this church I was youth pastor at, and the kids were all whispering in little circles. And it was not one of those times when they were just whispering about nonsense. You could tell they had something important on their mind. Well, there was a girl, and we'll just call her Susie, but she had been a leader in the youth group, and she discovered that she was pregnant that week. And she'd shared that with a few of her friends, and suddenly it went viral, as they say now. Not because we had social media, because in those days we didn't, but it went viral because we had, you tell a teen. That's like telegraph, telephone, tell a teen, and it goes. And so they had made the circles with this thing. And so at Sabbath school, they were all intently talking about it. And I suddenly heard what they were talking about. And I asked a few questions and was, yeah, she's pregnant. And so then I began asking them some questions of my own. I said, well, what would you do if it were you? How would you want the church to react if it were you? And they just sat there and stared at me. I said, would you want condemnation and judgment, or would you want some acceptance and empathy? Well, we would want acceptance and empathy. I said, then what are you doing to model that for the church? Because what I'm hearing right now is your judgment. You guys ever made a mistake? Oh yeah, we all make mistakes. She made one. So how can we best support her in her mistake? Well, we didn't get to the Sabbath school lesson that day. As a matter of fact, we spent the entire time talking about how we could support this girl on her journey. And they decided that they were going to, some of the girls were going to become her, because she had decided already, she told some of them, I don't believe in abortion, I'm not going to give it up, I'm going to go through with it, I'll have to drop out of school, and so forth. So some decided they were going to be a committee to go to the school, to the Adventist Academy there that she had just been let go from the day before, and see if there was a way, because she was a senior, if they couldn't finish out the last month and a half, 2 months before school was out, they would get her studies, they would take them over to her, and they would bring her assignments back. Then there was another group that said, well, we're going to be her pregnancy coaches. We're going to go with her to all the Lamaze classes. We're going to be there when the kid is born. There's another group that said, well, we're going to be the shower committee. And these kids went to work in earnest, and we're going to be there to support her every step of the way. And Susie, when she began discovering what's happened, she fully expected, like the woman in the street, to be hit with rocks anytime. And suddenly she looked up, and here's all of her friends, both guys and girls, supporting her and saying, okay, we can do this together. And so the girls, one committee went to the school. They got the curriculum committee to actually vote that, yes, she could finish out if these kids took the assignments, brought back her homework, and if she passed all the tests. And so they became her academic committee. There was a group, like I said, that started going to the birthing classes with her. And the third group, they were vicious. I mean, when I say vicious, I mean, they were determined. We're going to have a shower for this girl, and all the ladies of the church are going to come, and they're going to bring something. And so they started hitting up the elderly ladies of the church and saying, we're doing a shower for this girl. We're going to show her that Jesus loves her, even though she made a mistake. And you're going to be there, and we need to have you bring a gift. And when that shower happened, my wife was there, and there were about 55 women there. I think that's a successful shower by any standard. When that baby was born, that birthing group was there at the hospital. She called them. They called each other. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. They went down. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I got a call. We have a baby. And I went down about 8:30 or 9, and visited. But we had prayer over that baby, and the baby's daddy was there. He was not an academy student. He was a public high school student, but he was there. And he just said, I don't get it, because most churches would just throw you out with this. And I'll say, the very first Sabbath that baby came home, that teenage mom, her baby's daddy, and her folks were all in church. And they were surrounded by teens. When you begin to walk through with someone and you begin to empathize, it unlocks their heart. And when we begin to empathize with teens and we walk through things with them, it unlocks their heart. And that's what binds them to the church. They know somebody cares, somebody has my back, they're not going to let me down. And so I know that I've got somebody to empathize with me. So we're going to contemplate empathy for a minute. We're going back to Slido, and we're going to look at this. So take your phones once again, and see if you can answer those questions very quickly.
What context are we talking about? Compare to when you were young, within the church or society?
Or
okay.
Either, whatever your context was. I mean, society as well, yeah. What's similar, what's different? So let's look at these. Contemplate empathy. Whoops. Compared to when you were a young person, what's similar, what is different? The standards prevailed regardless. In church, I was surrounded by a few intentional people who mentored me. I thought the majority were somewhat standoffish and non-caring, it seemed. Don't see too much of that today. Today, people have more information than when I was young. Now we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter to keep you informed and keep relationships even in a pandemic. Yep. Multiplied information and access to it instantly. More diversity and cultural changes. Let me just say, some of that's good, some of it's not so good. You know, it's great to have multiplied information, but when you were a teen back in, the 50s, 60s, 70s, you didn't have all that information. You typically went to your parents, and your parents could answer questions for you. Now, most kids bypass their parents. Those teaching moments are lost on a lot of kids because they simply go to Google. And the information that they're getting isn't always really helpful to their spiritual growth. And I've got a whole other theory that I think that one of the reasons we see a rise in, for example, homosexuality and transgenderism and so forth is because they go to Google, Google sets up an algorithm and continues to show them more and more stuff to make it look more and more normal. And so they begin to buy into that without talking to anybody, challenging their things in private. They can begin looking at those things going on and on and on and say, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I agree with that. And so the more algorithms that keep going, the more it keeps showing them those same things. I think their minds are being drawn away. So one of the things that we, in empathizing with young people, it gives you a chance to actually challenge some of their thinking as you listen to who they are, try to understand what they're doing, and can give voice to that. So where do adults at your church observe young people? Some are very involved, hands-on, others see them as part of a program. Mostly at church, nowhere. During worship hour on Sabbath, on TV. It's kind of a sad state of affairs when you look at the adults of your church and you can't say, man, they're engaging them every Sabbath after church in the foyer, or every time we have a fellowship meal. Back when, remember we used to have those before COVID? Those kind of things. But it has to be intentionally done or it doesn't get done. Where do you observe young people? Everywhere. I notice when they're missing. Good. Whenever I get the chance, I like to observe them in their own environment. I like to see them in their own pond, so to speak. In campsites, young events. Wherever I go, the store, the streets, the park, malls and events and concert venues. Now notice you guys are more adept at noticing young people because you've been in ministry. You notice those people who tend to be marginalized. And that's why I did two different questions. Where do adults at your church interact with young people? Sabbath school mainly, but there are adults who interact with youth through Pathfinder, social, and sport events. And there are a lot of adults that do the Pathfinder thing, which is awesome. Matter of fact, when I was talking to a group of young adults not too long ago, I asked them the question, what was the best thing the church did for you growing up? And about 90% of them said Pathfinders. It was amazing. I thought they'd do other things, but Pathfinders, but then they grew out of Pathfinders. Many of them said, yeah, but I left that behind, and they saw it as something that used to be, but is no more. And that's why young adult ministry, I think, is becoming more and more important, because they don't identify with Pathfinders. Now, there are some that do identify with Pathfinders, and they're strongly in, and good for them. But we have a growing number that are not identifying with Pathfinders. Basically, adults at this church used to avoid them. In their family, their home setting, there's not a lot of interaction, it seems. Yep. Where do you currently interact? At home and friends of theirs when visiting churches. At home, my kids. And the university, when I go and visit my kids. At the church, whenever we had regular church functions, Sabbath school, etc., I would go and visit with them in their respective classes. In a planning event, my own kids who are young adults, at their events and schools or athletic venues. It's a lot easier to interact with young people when you have young people. When your kids are that age, my kids are now aging out of the young adult category, which makes me really old, but not as old as Ken, which fortunately, yes, Jesus is older. That's true. So that's what you're pointing up, right? We're number one. All right. So when we look at empathizing with today's young people, it means that we get down there, we talk, we listen, and so encouraging your churches to even hold listening events to say, what is it you're doing? Well, why is it you're doing it? How does that help? And how do we answer those three questions? How do we help you answer those three questions? If anybody should be able to answer, who am I? Where do I fit, and what's my purpose? It should be the church. We should have some good answers for those kids to help them discover how they belong, where they fit, what their purpose is, and how to serve God in the middle of that purpose. And I think that if we can do that, if we can bring empathy back, if we can begin looking at how we understand, how we listen, and how we then take those things in and we modify, or we allow them to help us modify what we're doing, we're going to see great gains in that. Now, we're actually done with today's thing. We're going to let you go 30 minutes early. I know that's going to disappoint you, but has this been helpful information for you? Has this been very good? Okay.
We're getting the PowerPoint today or tomorrow?
Thank you for asking. I will actually drop that in while we are thinking about it right now. Let me just grab that file and put it in here. So the first PowerPoint now that Ken did is the one that you can use in churches. That's the one that I'm dropping into the chat right now. You can actually take this as an introductory to your churches and say, here you go. And then the other stuff we can actually make available later. I've had to do a lot of transferring it from, well, we've got the PowerPoints, but then the Slido stuff, I had to put all that in myself. And so that's all saved in Google Slides. Anyway, so as you get into it with a church, if you want to use some of these, we can probably make those available as well. But the idea here is that at least you've got the first session. Did that show up in your chat? Okay, so you can download that here.
Are they editable? Because I have to translate them. Actually,
that's a good point. They have just come out with Growing Young in the Spanish version.
But the power, because I saw the book in Spanish version, but
yeah, the book is in Spanish version. I will check to see if they were supposed to be translating the PowerPoints all in the Spanish version. I'll check on that and see. Okay. If not, then I will try to get you the whole bundle so that you can actually begin translating them.
Thank you.
All right. So our next one is scheduled 9 o'clock Wednesday morning. And we'll hit the next two core, and we'll have some more Slido, and we'll have some more discussions, and hopefully we can build something really cool here. Thoughts,
Great.
comments as we go ahead.
I was going to say, Don and Ken, really appreciate your just working with us on this, helping us to better grasp the concepts in these first two sessions. Our goal is to become familiar with the growing young process with the efforts and hopes of working with pastors and churches and having conversations with them to encourage them to become more sensitive in these areas. And as we hopefully build a growing interest to possibly route some of the pastors, some of their church boards and all to further study and learning, and maybe even some invitations extended to either you guys to do a full-blown presentation to them as well. Because from a personal perspective, I see this as the salvation of our church. It takes care of two problems: churches that are plateauing and dying out, and number two, young people, young adults who are not engaging, who are not picking up the mantle and moving forward with it. It takes care of both of those issues when done in a good way. And so I do appreciate what you guys are doing, and I hope the team is appreciating this as well. And just thank you for what you do.
Very good.
We can accept all the offerings online now, can't we, Donnie, for contributions that could...
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I wish Popcorn Haven hadn't closed, man. We'd definitely send you some of that by snail mail.
That was good stuff. That was good stuff. Yep. So,
Well,
all right, guys.
Good for us to review it as well. I always learn something and pick up something from your contributions as well. Thank you.
So Wednesday morning at 9 is our next session then, huh?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
Would you lead us in a prayer, Rick, as we close?
Okay. Lord, thank you for the time that we've been able to share this morning. It's important for us to understand where the next generation is seeing things and needing support and encouragement. And Lord, we're all here this morning because somebody encouraged us.
Right.
And I pray that in turn we will be a catalyst in our roles to encourage and mentor the next generations. So we appreciate so much, Lord, the work that Ken and Don have put forth in this. And I pray that our team will take this torch as well and use it wherever we might to grow the church and to expand your kingdom, especially for the next generation. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We will see you on Wednesday.